This is Spare Time Repair, and this is a Sony CDP-333ESD from 1988. The ES, or Elevated Standard line, is Sony's premium range of audio equipment first introduced in 1965, with the D meaning that it has a digital output. This is another unit from Craig, the owner of the wood-faced consonance player I looked at recently. He told me that the tray wasn't working properly on this one, but it will play the disc that's stuck inside. When testing it though, I noticed that many of the front panel buttons aren't working, including the track selectors, so I figured that the open-close instruction just wasn't being recognised. I then remembered that it also given me the remote control, and although it looks like an aftermarket knockoff, it does have an open-close command. Using that, the tray does open, but it is a little sluggish. You can bet this won't be your average belt change though, more of an elevated standard one. Sorry about the reflections. A lot of Sony's early players had this glossy finish to the case, and this is actually a Japanese model. It runs on 100 volts, so for testing I'll be using a step-down power transformer. See that power warning sticker on the top? And as much as I like these higher-end players, they are very densely packed and not quite so easy to work on. And all you DAC fans will be excited to see that this model is using the famous TDA 1541. So I'm going to eject the tray using the remote. And you could see it was hesitant at the beginning there. It's actually using a thin wire pulley system, which wraps around a wheel on this end to move the tray in and out. But there is still a belt, and although it feels okay, maybe that's to blame. There's a couple of micro switches here operated by this cam, and this whole center section of the tray is dropping down. So I think the first thing I need to do is remove the front panel and figure out why a lot of those buttons aren't working. I think the tray front is going to have to come off for that, and it looks like it's secured by a couple of hex screws in the front. You see these on some other players as dummy plastic imitations, but these appear to be the real thing. And that is a solid slab of aluminium. Well, maybe I didn't need to remove those two. And these two just appear to be connecting this plate, so I'm going to leave those. 3 underneath. This should now come off. Well, it would if it wasn't tethered. And I think I do need to remove this plate because it's holding in the PCB, or will do when I remove the screws. It's probably easier to unscrew the front panel PCB than it is to disconnect these cables. Maybe there's just corrosion in these buttons. It's unusual for so many to be just completely unresponsive. Okay, this should lift out. Need to remove this one as well. Well, that's going to be fun. And that is a pretty hefty faceplate, mostly aluminium. So are these buttons just corroded? Let's find out. So I'm pressing it now. Wow. That's literally doing nothing. Well, that's good news in a way. It means that we don't have a faulty chip or anything like that. At least I don't think so. But I just counted 44 individual tactile buttons here. And although some of them are working, I think they're all going to need a service. Well, that's something to make your heart sink. Let's test the play button, since that is working. Yeah, that's not great either. Wow, what a pain. Whenever I service these buttons, people tell me that I should just replace them because they're very easy to get hold of, they're very cheap, and yes, but it's still a faff, and I would have to wait for them to arrive. So although it's going to take a couple of hours at least, I think, I'm going to service the existing. The problem for me is something I haven't yet told you, and that's that I have another one of these players, exactly the same model, with exactly the same symptoms. So maybe I'll service these buttons and replace the ones on the other machine. Well, I'm going to look inside this one just to see how bad they are. Well, that's weird. That doesn't look corroded at all. Why wasn't that working? Cleaning it with a fiberglass pencil. Well, it's worked, but I'm very surprised. So let's power it up again and see if that skip backward button is working now. So if I select, say, track 5, will it skip backwards? It will. Okay, well, Guess what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of hours? Well, that took about 2.5 hours, but I have now serviced every single button. So let's turn it on and see if they work. Eject. Well, that's just highlighting the tray issues. Let's try the direct track access, track 5. Well, I'm happy with that. Everything seems to be okay now, so we can focus on that tray. It looks like you can manually open this tray by turning this motor. So doing that presses in this bottom micro switch. And then the tray opens, releasing the top micro switch. There's two here stacked on top of each other. And there is quite a lot of resistance there, but I can't tell whether it's because of this wire pulley or whether it's sticking on this rail. There's also a lot of play in this rail. But if we undo this bracket, then we can remove the whole thing. I wonder whether there's meant to be some sort of collar on the end here. No, there's still that resistance. So I think it is this wire. Someone with a leaf blower outside. They always do it when I'm trying to make a video. Well, removing this would be risky. That looks a bit tricky to get back into place. So for now I'm just going to remove all the old grease. See if that makes any improvement. I'm going to remove this rail as well because there's some old grease under here. You can see in there it's all gone yellow and gloopy. And as usual, I'm going to use my synthetic grease. Yeah, there's some disintegrated rubber down here, so I think there was a collar on there previously. Use a little bit of white lithium grease on this rail. I think that collar only would have been at this end. I think one of these washers would help. There's only room for one, but it would take up a lot of that slack. I'm going to use a little bit of glue just to A, stick it in place, and B, take up even more of that gap. In fact, I could probably force one on this end too. Yeah, there's no play in that at all now. I think if I flip this over, there's an access hatch on the bottom. I'm hoping I can reach this belt from there. Well, it's more than a hatch. The whole bottom plate comes off by the looks of it. A couple of screws missing, so maybe someone's been in here before. Forgot the one in the middle. We've got this lovely motorised sled rail. It feels very smooth. I always forget what this is called. Is it a linear actuator motor? But that's so smooth that I can't see any benefit in removing it and greasing the rail. Down here we actually have two belts. One here, one here. It'll be easier to pop those off. Well, it's certainly misshapen. The second one's a little bit trickier to get off. Maybe if I remove this. Yeah, there we go. And that one looks in much better shape. This one though has lost its grip. I did recently find some thicker belts. I think they're all going to be too small. Oh, maybe not. That's pretty close. So after all that, I didn't really need to remove this one. In fact, before I refit this, I'm going to clean this pulley because it looks like there's a bit of grease on it. It's actually quite stiff. There shouldn't be as much resistance there as there is. So I'm going to remove this circlip. Oh, this post has gone really sticky. It's gone so sticky it's hard to get it off. Can remove some of this cotton material to try and get it all the way through. There we go. Some new grease. And that's a big improvement. Don't ping off. And now the replacement belt. Well, that was pretty straightforward. This is a nice unit to service. And I don't think we need to do anything else with the transport. So I'm going to pop the bottom plate back on. I do love a removable bottom plate. And those two missing screws aren't going to cause too much bother. There's a little bit of corrosion around this puck, and while it doesn't seem to be inhibiting playback, I would like to clean it up. We should be able to release that by pushing this tab in. I'm just going to put this towel under here, just run around the edge with the fiberglass pen. This part shouldn't be lubricated, but it will help if it's smoother. See a bit of rust on there. I'll clean this up as well. And I'm going to clean the lens with the clamp in situ. I don't really see the point of removing it. Just want to check this micro switch because the tray did close on its own earlier. Nothing wrong with that. And the two on this side. That one's okay. I'll need to release this one first. Well, that one's not so good. But this is a sealed unit, so I'm not sure how serviceable it's going to be. Looks like it would come apart if I desoldered it. And I'd like to show off my new desoldering gun, but that's for through-hole components and these are blade connections. So the screw's obviously going through both of them and then terminating in the end here. I may regret this because there's going to be springs and tiny contacts in here. Actually it's fine. Just a little spring on the top. Little squirt of contact cleaner for good measure. Got to remember how the bracket went now. I can put the screws in before I solder it, make sure everything lines up. Yep, that's actuating properly. But now I'm thinking the other gear was all sticky. Maybe I should remove these ones. Well, I'm glad I removed that. That's very hard. Just going to put a bit of oil in this motor bearing. Fresh grease on the posts. Cleaned up all the gears under running water. So I think this one needs to go on first. That is so much smoother. And a bit of fresh grease in here as well. But before I put it all back together, I need to clean up the front panel. Plenty of dust in there. Looks like this one is stuck down, which is annoying. No, it was just a rubber gasket that had gone a bit sticky. And these buttons are solid aluminium. Okay, time for a good scrub. Well, that's all nice and clean again. But I'm not sure you need to see me repopulate it, especially with all these numbered buttons, which is going to take a while. So I'll come back when it's all done. Those buttons are all back in. I'm not going to make the mistake of turning it upside down again. Just want to clean up this display before I do fit it, because there's some residue from the foam gasket. It comes off nice and easily with some alcohol. And with nothing to retain these direct track access buttons, it's going to be a bit tricky to do this. I think I am going to have to remove this board after all. Well, this one loops around this earth wire, which is mildly inconvenient. In fact, I need to undo that anyway. And yes, I did mark my connectors. I think that went on there like that. Everything's clicking. You can tell where these go just from the length of them. A few cable ties just to tidy things up. So let's check that everything still works. All looks good to me. So now we can reattach our tray front. Well, that tray is still a little bit sluggish. Well, this is the second player, and I wasn't intending to feature this one because the symptoms are basically the same. So I went through exactly the same service procedure, including all the front panel buttons. But I noticed when I powered it up that when I pressed eject, it wasn't even trying to open. There was no motor sound. So I was checking voltages, comparing between the two machines, and I actually found that there's two circuit protectors down here, just hiding under these cables, and they're both open. So no power at all is getting to the drive. And on the other side of the board, it's these two here. So I'm going to just replace those and see if it fixes the problem. So that's an N10. And that's exactly the same. I've got one of those in my kit. N10. So you can see the original ones are completely open. And there could be an underlying issue that's causing them to go, but it's worth a try. Looks like the pad has come off for this one, so I'm going to scrape back some of this trace. Okay, so we should have continuity here. Good. Okay, will it open now? Yes, but that tray clearly has issues as well. Maybe that spindle has dropped because it's scraping a bit. Anyway, we're making progress. I've removed this wire cable for the draw pulley system, and this gear is suffering from exactly the same issue with this sticky grease. There's quite a bit of resistance on that, but this one has an awful lot of resistance. I think that's probably where the problem is. But this wire has a coating on it, and there's a breakage here, which probably isn't helping either. I'm not sure there's anything I can do about that. I can barely get this off the spindle. So this will be the problem with the other machine as well, because I watched a video of how the tray should work, and it opens and closes incredibly quickly. It almost slams shut. So I'm going to clean off all this old grease, re-lubricate, and hopefully refit this cable. Well, it's a good job I didn't film myself trying to rethread that wire, because I'd have been demonetized for bad language. But anyway, it's done now. It still doesn't like it. Barely working at all now. I think it's just fussy about the belts it wants. So I've ordered 2 proper belt kits, and I'll just have to hope that that resolves the issue. The new belts have arrived, so let's see if the correct size really does make all the difference. I think the thickness of them is kind of in between the 2 that I was using before. I also watched a few other videos about this mechanism and the tray problems, and on all the ones I looked at there was a metal plate covering these pulleys here. In fact, you can see the screw holes for it. So I don't know what happened to the original one from here. I suppose as there's 2 pulleys, they do need to be in balance. And if one is tighter than the other one, it might just throw the whole thing off. So has that improved things? Well, I don't know that it's perfect, but it's a lot better. And now we're back with player B, and I thought I'd do exactly the same, change the belts, rethread the steel cable, make sure all the pulleys are loose, and it made no difference at all. The tray barely opened, so I thought maybe the motor's seized, so I removed that, went to oil it, and the pulley just pulled straight off. So no wonder it wasn't working. I've never seen that before, so it never had a chance. But I'm now wondering whether the other machine has the same problem but to a lesser extent. But anyway, I need to resecure this to the spindle, and I'm not quite sure how to do it. I think if I had some of that very low viscosity CA glue, it would probably wick inside, but I don't. I've just put some normal super glue on there, and I'm going to leave it for half an hour just to give it the best chance. But I don't know, it might break the first time I try it. No, this is player A, and the spindle feels very tightly locked on there. So I don't think it's an issue on this player. So this is player B, the one I've just glued the pulley on. And we've finally resolved the problem. After all that, it's actually the tray for player B that now works best. I service both players in exactly the same way, so I don't know why player A's tray is slightly slower, but I think it's still acceptable. I can't usually tell much difference in the sound of the players I repair, but these Sonys sound noticeably smooth and detailed. Track access is almost instant, even when going from first to last, and it makes this model a pleasure to use. Thanks to Craig for trusting me with them, thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.